Hi guys, it's me again. It's been a few months and I wanted to share an update on my first ever Commander deck. So if you remember, I did a whole video talking about Ashaya Soul of the Wild, my first commander, and how I built my first deck with him. As you can see, I've upgraded a little bit. I have got this cool, sick box. I really love the art on it. 10 out of 10. Peak my style. So I want to talk about how my first few games went. Not very good, because I was missing a very key element to my whole plan. Trample. Either that or it's just a skill issue. I don't know, but every time I personally played it, I ran into too many problems where I could beef up my creatures, went to take the smackdown, and boom, the opponent would chop block. Or I wasn't pulling enough in time. It felt like I kept pulling good cards, but not in the right order. So I could never lay down the stuff I needed for landfall soon enough. I couldn't get my landfall triggers to work the way I wanted. It felt like I was always wasting my land, and by the time I got to play something that required landfall, well, I already had all my land out. I can't really explain how that happened, or why it worked like that. It's just one of those, you kind of had to be there. But I had a few people test drive this deck for me, and some things I noticed that it was really good at was that it could really ramp up those creatures, make them big. I could get them really big, and if you get one of my token triggers out there, they would just keep going. So in one game, I was able to see the person proxying my deck for me do over 100 damage between Ashaya and tokens that just kept stacking. This was not really intended to be a token deck. I just so happened to have some landfall triggers that generated tokens or generated more creature cards. So that was great. And the only reason that these guys really won with them is because the people we were playing against did not really have a lot of protection against big creatures like that, so trample wasn't as necessary. They didn't have a lot of removal, and to be honest, I think I accidentally built a broken deck, in the sense that when I would talk to people about it, they would tell me a lot of the cards I included were higher level and not really meant to be played as casually, and a lot of people do use them in higher level decks. I did not know this. I just was trying to build a good deck, and I was taking advice from a lot of my friends who play, so that was probably where that came into play. Now, not that I was necessarily not wanting to build a really cool deck, but I didn't realize the balance level that it was, and now that I'm kind of learning a little bit more since then, I understand now that what I was going for was kind of a bit OP. The problem comes in whenever I go to play it, I'm not really sure if I'm playing things at the right moment. And I think that's where I just need a lot more practice to understand it. But I do have one regret, and that was that I bought all of my cards before proxying them first. So I did end up getting rid of and swapping out a ton of cards since my first draft of this deck. And there's still a few more that I want to change out. But overall, I wanted to give you guys the update on what I learned. And the biggest takeaway was that I really needed to add more trample and utilize more of my land play a bit more, not be scared to play my land or play certain things just because I don't have a trigger out yet, because the idea is that I will get there. I think I need a little bit more ramp too, but I kind of want to try to avoid that because I'm not trying to build a quick and fast deck. That was never the goal. I wanted to build slow and steady and bomb. That's kind of where I'm at. But trial and error, we live and we learn. I do want to talk about some key cards that I included and how some of my combos worked out. So I do have Veil of Summer, but I keep this on my sideboard. Veil of Summer is an instant, and it's for 1 green mana. It says draw a card if an opponent has cast a blue or black spell this turn. Spells you control can't be continued countered this turn. You and permanents you control gain hexproof from blue and from black until end of turn, meaning you and they can't be the targets of blue or black spells or abilities your opponents control. Now, I know some people will say, oh, technically Commander doesn't have a sideboard, and oh, you really don't need that card, it sucks. But I keep it because I personally am a more casual player in the sense that I don't care about all those like nitpicky rules like that. If I'm playing with my friends and they allow it, then I will. And I don't see the problem with that, frankly. Like, maybe that's a hot take, but if I know I'm going to be playing against people and they have a few different decks that they carry and I don't know which one they're going to play, especially if this is my only deck right now, I want to be able to swap things in and out. I mean, they get a pool of options, I can get a pool of options, people change their decks all the time. I don't really think it's that weird to keep cards on the side that you want to swap in and out depending on who you're going to play or what decks you're going to play. So this one is in my deck currently because I'm waiting on some other cards to come in. Can't say it's going to be that great, but it's there. A card that I've really been hesitant on removing, but I've kept in because I don't think, again, that I've been using it for its full power and I want to give it a shot, is Yeva Nature's Herald. One of my friends insists that I keep this in because it lets me play green creature spells as though they had flash. So I could throw in my big boys at any time. I could wait and hold some of my plays until I'm going to be attacked. That's actually a great move. I think that's what's been hurting me a few times as I go and put out a lot of my creatures and then enemies have time to plan and think around my creatures. Whereas I think I would do a little bit better since my deck is more slow and steady by being able to just juke them and throw them out with flash, because then they never know what I'm going to put out and it prevents them a little more from hurting me in the moment. So I haven't really taken advantage of that ability when it's been out, and I want to try doing that more. I just kind of forget how it works because I normally don't play with the flash ability that much. Now, some other cards I've thought about removing, but people really strongly recommend that I don't, is Azusa Lost But Seeking and Dryad of the Elysian Grove. Both of these allow me to play an additional land on each of my turns or play 2 additional lands on each of my turns. Now, the entire reason I want to get rid of these is every time I've had them out, I've been mana screwed. I have 36 lands in this deck, so I'm not really sure why I'm getting mana screwed as often as I am when these cards come out. Maybe it's just seriously bad luck. But I feel like I've never been in a good enough position to be able to put out that many lands at once. So I'm keeping them in to keep giving them a shot, but I have not been able to reap the benefits of their abilities yet. One card that has really done me a lot of good and I have found to be a really good play for this deck is my enchantment creature Courser of Crufix. It's 3 mana and it says play with the top card of your library revealed. You may play lands from the top of your library. Whenever a land enters the battlefield under your control, you gain 1 life. Now, this is not a lifelink deck by any means, but I am glad that I have a little bit of an ability gaining life through this, and I'm able to keep my deck exposed and get that land out there quicker. This has actually helped me in getting land out a lot faster than both Azusa Lost But Seeking and Dryad of the Elysian Grove combined. So that is why I'm keeping this one and have actually found great benefit in having it, is because it has helped me every time I have needed it. Now, at some point I did kind of start to shift the deck to a more tree folk style, and that was in my second draft. I would say this is my 3rd or 4th draft at this point since I made my first video. And I originally wanted the idea to be like a tree type of vibe, but I didn't want it to be a tree folk deck, if that makes sense. So once I realized that that wasn't really gonna work, so I took out all my tree folk and I think I'm gonna set them aside for another deck for tree folk specifically. Have not decided on a commander just yet, but that helped me weed out some cards to make room for better ones. Ashaya is a legendary elemental creature, and even though he looks like a tree, he is still an elemental at heart. So I kind of themed this deck around plants, and it is now known as my plant fall deck. I also finally ended up getting Lumra Bellow of the Woods. Did I ever get the chance to pull it in any of my draft packs, in any of my pre-cons or pre-release packs or gifted booster packs packs? No. Never pulled Lumra, not even in my collector's box. I had to buy her off of TCG, but she's here and she's beautiful and she's better than ever, and she's the whole theme of this box. I am glad. So she is the edition that you didn't get to see last time because I didn't have her yet. Now, one card that people keep suggesting I remove is Aggressive Mammoth. I have not removed this card despite it being 6 mana because it has trample and other creatures I control have trample, and it is an 8/8. I think for 6 mana, with how much mana I'm gonna be pulling by the time I would probably be able to use this card, this is worth it. This is like one of the cards that I think, if I can pull it right, will help me with my trample problem. So I've kept him in there. I have not been as lucky to pull him when I've needed him, but I know that when he comes out, he'll be ready, and I'm confident in that card, so I'm keeping him. Another card I have added by popular demand and recommendation is Genesis Wave. Genesis Wave is a 3 mana with the option to add more based on X value. It's a sorcery. Reveal the top X cards of your library. You may put any number of permanent cards with mana value X or less from among them onto the battlefield. Then put all cards revealed this way that weren't put onto the battlefield into your graveyard. So this would be nice because once I get a lot of mana, I can play this guy, play a bunch of mana for value X, and be able to get a lot of my cards out onto the battlefield without paying their mana. So if I know what some of my higher ability cards are, I can kind of think about what my mana value will be and wait to play that amount when I pull this card. And I think that will be helpful. I didn't understand it at first when I was first recommended it, but now I get it, and I get why that card will work really well in this deck. Have I had the opportunity to use it yet? No, but I see a future. Another card that I love playing with, and this is honestly how my people who were helping me play this deck were able to do so good with it, was Unnatural Growth. They were able to do so much damage with this because it is an enchantment that says at the beginning of each combat, double the power and toughness of each creature you control until end of turn. This one's just really hard for people to remove if they don't have enchantment removal. And I've pulled this one almost every game, so maybe I'm just a little bit biased, but it has been awesome in helping me deal that damage. And another one of the ways I didn't anticipate that this deck would win is through commander damage. I kind of forgot that commander damage was a thing, but I've been able to do a lot of damage with Ashaya alone, and in the moments when I'm having a tough time pulling the cards I need to really pop off the way that I wanted this deck to, Ashaya alone, I've been able to deal damage with him and really play a smackdown. And I think I even won a game where I was able to kill with him within 3 turns of getting him onto the board, something like that. So I think he's really powerful, and I think this is really powerful with it. I think Ashaya is great as a standalone when I need him to be. It's not really the goal, but I found that he is an additional win condition. Then I have added Scute Mob, which is an insect at 1 mana to play this guy. At the beginning of your upkeep, if you control 5 or more lands, put 4 +1/+1 counters on Scute Mob. In 2 turns, I can have this guy at an 8/8. So this deck is really about just growing and growing. I will say my Scute Swarm and Scute Mob have both been insta-killed when I've played them, so I haven't really got to let them pop off as much, but they're great cards, and I'm keeping them in even with their likelihood of being removed. I also got to try out Court of Bounty. Now, in my first game playing with this deck, I had Court of Bounty out, Roaring Earth, and Unnatural Growth. The great thing about this combo that really worked, at least for the beginning, is it allowed me to put counters on a creature each turn. Their power and toughness would double. And then I had Court of Bounty, which says at the beginning of your upkeep, you may put a land card from your hand onto the battlefield. If you're the monarch, instead, you may put a creature or land card from your hand onto the battlefield. With this, I happen to be able to put creatures out every turn, put a counter on them, and then double their power, and boom. I did that every round for a little bit while my opponents were getting mana screwed or whatever was happening. I don't know if this combo would work every time. I just know for a first play, this was kind of nice to understand how these 3 cards worked. And I kept them in because it's kind of nostalgic to me now at this point. I also found out Defense of the Heart is apparently like it's considered a really high level card that if you put this in your deck, you're considered mean or not a casual player. I didn't know this. I originally was going to remove this until I was pointed out how good it is. It's an enchantment for 4 mana. At the beginning of your upkeep, if an opponent controls 3 or more creatures, sacrifice Defense of the Heart. Search your library for up to 2 creature cards, put those cards on the battlefield, then shuffle. This basically allows me to go through my deck and get my strongest creatures, put them out early on, especially if I pull this early on and my enemies have 3 creatures and let's say I'm struggling to get any. So this is a great kind of early to mid-game card and it has helped me, but I find that if anyone's going to use their enchantment removal on me, it's going to be for this one. I also added this beautiful baby from the Bloomborough set, Nissa Who Shakes the World, the frog version. Now, I didn't have a Planeswalker before, or I did, but I ended up removing him because he didn't really make sense with my deck after thinking about it. I didn't really understand how Planeswalkers worked at the time, but I've been pointed out that Nissa, any of the Nissas will really work great with this, and I also didn't know there were multiple Nissas, so I guess that's on me. For her +1, it says put 3 +1/+1 counters on up to 1 target non-creature land you control. Untap it. It becomes a 0/0 elemental creature with vigilance and haste. That's still a land. If you keep doing this each turn, which we start with 5, if I did that for 3 turns in a row and then did -8, then it says you get an emblem with lands you control have indestructible. Search your library for any number of forest cards, put them onto the battlefield, tapped, then shuffle. This one is great because Ashaya's ability says non-token creatures you control are forest lands in addition to their other types. So this would mean that all of my lands and creatures would become indestructible if both of those were out together and I used that ability. Cannot guarantee that people won't try and just like wreck her as soon as they see her, but I haven't got to try her yet, but I'm really excited and I was recommended that one of the Nissas would go in there, and if I had to choose, I chose her. So I'm hoping that one will be really good. I feel like I've understood a little bit more about how this deck plays and what will work with it, and I'm very excited to be able to do more with it. Now, someone did point out that I have Argothian Elder. On my last video, someone commented a combo with Argothian Elder that I guess I didn't think about at the time when I put this one in my deck. Argothian Elders is 4 mana, and its ability is untap 2 target lands. So I can tap this to untap 2 target lands. And it says, because if this is out on the board with Ashaya, I can also untap this guy and infinitely keep untapping him for mana if I needed to. I didn't realize that. I didn't double check that. So if that's wrong, someone let me know, but that sounds right. I think I vaguely remember someone actually telling me this a long time ago when I first originally thought about putting this in the deck. So that's good to know. I hope I remember that when I go to play it. I haven't really got to pull Argothian Elder yet either in all of my plays, but that's nice to know that if I tap it, I can untap it and something else to use it as mana. Let me know if that's wrong, but that sounds like a cool combo with Ashaya. Now, I am not 100% certain if I'll keep this card in, but I did add Jaddi Offshoot, which is 1 mana. It's a defender, and on landfall, whenever a land enters the battlefield under your control, you gain 1 life. This one was kind of just a gimme, just kind of a filler card. I thought it would be nice to have a defender if I could. That would also give me life as I'm chilling, I guess. I don't think all my cards need to be super powerful. I think it's nice to kind of just have some simple ones in there. Last but not least, another card I want to talk about is Fanatic of Rhonas. Fanatic of Rhonas is 2 mana, and if you tap it, it adds 1 mana. But it also has Ferocious. You can tap it to add 4 mana. You can only activate this if you control a creature with power 4 or greater. That one's easy because I can get Ashaya out on the board with 4 mana out, and he's already a 4/4. So if I can have Ashaya out and Fanatic of Rhonas, I can tap this guy for 4 mana. That's a lot of mana early game if I pull him. I did not realize how good this card was until I started playing him, and I was like, wow, if I do need ramp, he's my ramp. So I've heard that one's really good to have in decks like mine, and I'm really glad to know that. Now that's just some of the highlights of the cards I've added versus removed. There's a few more that I've thought about including that I'm kind of still waiting on. When I get my final list, I'm going to update it on my mana box, but for now I will send a link to my mana box in my description below so that way you can see the updated card list from my last video. I have to say overall, for a first deck, I've learned a lot with it, and even with a lot of the money I feel like I may have wasted with it, a lot of the key cards that I spent a ton of money on, they did end up staying, and I think that this is just a really fun deck for me to play. I let a lot of my other friends play it. They really enjoy getting to try them out and be big stompy. You know, some of my friends who judge me for liking green and it being an easy color to play or one of the most simple ways to play, they love playing my deck, and I have to say, I think it's been fun sharing it with them and watching people play it. I am still learning a lot about how to deck build, and I actually have a few more decks I've been working on since my last video that I want to share in another video. But overall, I think it's been a great experience, and I hope that soon I can really fully finalize it. I don't know how common it is for people to change their decks around after they think they're done with it, but I'm very much one of those that I want it to be set in stone and done, have them ready, and then move on to the next one. And I still feel like I'm constantly changing this one up because it's not quite where I want it to be. But I think it could also be a little bit of skill issue. So I think I just need a little bit more experience in playing more and figuring out my combos. I just don't have as many people to play with as I would like, so the opportunities come few and far between. So that's my review of my own Plantfall deck. I hope you enjoyed the update. If you have any recommendations for cards that I could include, if there's any rules that I mentioned that I communicated incorrectly, do please let me know. I'm still learning the game. And overall, if you get the chance to look at my mana box link, please let me know what you think. In the meantime, feel free to tell me what your favorite deck is. Share below your favorite commanders, what cards you really love to play, your favorite colors. I want to hear all about it. It's been quite the journey deck building since I first started this. I'm sure it'll get easier over time the more that I do it, but it can be very daunting. And just like I mentioned in my first video, if you're new to Magic like me or new to deck building, don't let that scare you. Do your best to try to reach out to people around you that play the game and get advice if you can. I know that my way of first tackling doing a commander deck might be a little bit unconventional, but I think it's fun. And I think definitely proxying is probably the best way to go. There are some good proxy sites I've found since then that I wish I knew about when I first made my deck, because it's so cheap. You can get 100 cards for less than 30 bucks. You can really use that to test out playing your decks without having to drop too much money onto it. If I had known about it even sooner, I would have just outright bought proxy cards. I know that that's not the name of the game for everybody. A lot of people like to do this for the collecting and the earning of the cards, but if we're being realistic, not everybody can afford that. And I think people should be more understanding of proxy players and that predicament. Sometimes it really is just about the game and the thematics for some people. It doesn't have to be that deep. So don't ever feel bad if you have to do proxies, especially whenever you're just learning how to build decks and you just want to try things out. I would have definitely done that for my very first draft had I known what I was doing, but you know, here we are. I think we've learned a lot. I'm very excited about this deck, and I hope to be able to share with you more what I've been working on. So in the meantime, tell me what you think, and I'll see you guys again soon. Thanks for watching.